Welcome back to my channel Unusual Porra. I decided that I would cover the StarCraft franchise as I have completed the breakdown of the races in the Master of Orion, Conquer the Stars PC game. I will try my best to give you, dear listener, a thorough breakdown of all the races in the StarCraft franchise, but I think my first port of call will be a medium-length early history of the lore that is StarCraft. Many of you dear listeners, I will assume, have played some, if not all, of the games released over the years from the original StarCraft until the finale in Legacy of the Void. So then let us begin from the actual beginning with the Xel'Naga. The Xel'Naga. The Xel'Naga are a seemingly extinct race of extragalactic scientists. They arrived in the Milky Way galaxy in their world ships, and there they began manipulating various species, intending to create something with purity of form and purity of essence as a necessary part of their life cycle. They first modified the Protoss, an intelligent psychic species they discovered on the outlying world of Aiea. To their joy, they discovered the Protoss had both purity of form and essence. However, the Xel'Naga pushed their creation too far, causing their psychic link to disappear and their purity of essence to vanish. The Protoss fell into madness as the Xel'Naga abandoned them. The Xel'Naga discovered another species, the Zerg, on the central world of Xerus. These small insectoids demonstrated purity of essence. The Xel'Naga created the Overmind, which contained their sentient desires, holding them together with a hive mind. However, the Overmind became aware of the Xel'Naga's presence and, upon acquiring space-flying breeds, ordered its minions to attack the world ships. The greater whole of the Xel'Naga race was wiped out. The Protoss. The Protoss, bereft of their gods, as they viewed the Xel'Naga, fell into the Aeon of Strife, a massive generations-long civil war. The Mystic Cos, using the power of Xel'Naga artifacts called Kadarin crystals, reforged the Protoss psionic link, which he called the Kala, and helped heal their racial wound. The sanity of the Protoss was restored. The new Protoss society divided itself into three castes: the Judicator caste, which consisted of religious leaders, controlled by the Conclave; the Templar caste, the warriors who protected the people; and the Kalai caste, which provided laborers and artisans. The Protoss used much Xel'Naga technology. The Protoss expanded their influence over many worlds formerly controlled by the Xel'Naga, and both protected and manipulated lesser races according to their philosophy of Dayul. When the Terrans arrived in the Kaprulu sector, in the shadow of Protoss space, the Protoss secretly protected them too. Shortly before the Great War, the Protoss became aware of the Zerg, another race modified by the Xel'Naga. The Zerg had secretly begun infesting a number of Terran worlds. Executor Tassadar of the Templar caste was ordered to take his fleet and purify the most heavily infested world, Chao Saa. Tassadar followed his orders, sparking panic in the Terran Confederacy, but when ordered to purify the next world, Mars Saa, he refused, as he believed the Terrans there still stood a chance against the Zerg. The Dark Templar. Following the Aeon of Strife, Protoss society codified itself with the Kala, a religion and psionic philosophy governing their behavior which was intended to prevent another Aeon of Strife. A number of Protoss, called the Rogues, refused to submit to the Kala and tried to hide themselves from the Conclave. Eventually, the Conclave ordered the leader of the Templar, young Executor Adun, to terminate them. Adun taught them how to hide themselves from the Conclave instead. However, the Rogues were unable to control their powers without the Kala, and their presence was revealed when they accidentally created massive psionic storms over Aiea. Unable to hide their presence any longer, the Conclave ordered them banished from Aiea. Over time, they became known as the Dark Templar for their habit of cutting their psionic appendages to separate themselves from the Kala. Following their exile, the Dark Templar settled on the dark planet of Shakuras, led by their matriarch Razagal. The Zerg. The Zerg are a biologically engineered species and the second, after the Protoss, to be engineered by the Xel'Naga. Possessing a purity of essence, the Zerg were originally a race of worm-like parasites which over time could absorb the genetics of their victims. They were controlled by the Xel'Naga-crafted Overmind, which broke contact with the Xel'Naga and eventually spurred the Zerg swarm into destroying its masters, stealing their knowledge. The Zerg swarm formed into a hierarchy, led by the immortal Overmind, the immortal Cerebrates underneath it, and the Overlords. The modern Zerg swarm emerged as a collection of breeds, capable of living in harsh conditions. Most were adapted for combat. The Overmind became aware of the Protoss and was determined to assimilate them into its own species. Upon discovering the Terrans, it intended to assimilate their psionic potential to help it in its conquest of the Protoss. When the Zerg overwhelmed Chao Saya, the Protoss responded by destroying all life on the planet's surface. By then, the Zerg had already infested numerous other Terran worlds. The Zerg prepared to fight a war with the Protoss, leaving the Terrans trapped between them. The Terrans. The humans of Earth fell under the control of the United Powers League in 2229. The new government believed in the divinity of mankind and worked to eliminate anyone who had undergone genetic engineering or used non-essential cybernetic equipment. Government forces also cracked down on criminals, religious people, political activists, and other dissidents. About 40 years later, scientist Doran Routh collected thousands of such prisoners onto supercarriers as part of a colonization project. The prisoners were cryogenically frozen and supplied with materials needed to found colonies, including Atlas, a revolutionary new AI. However, the ship sped right past their target planet. During the journey, Atlas detected a relatively high rate of mutations leading to psionic powers in the prisoners, sending the information back to Routh. The lost ships ended up in the Kaprulu sector after 3 decades of travel, approximately 200 years ago. The new Terran colonists settled the worlds of Tarsones, Moria, and Umoja. The colonists of Tarsones had access to Atlas and would form the most powerful of the 3 civilizations, the Terran Confederacy. Many Confederate colonists disagreed with their government on economic and other matters, sparking numerous rebellions. These were generally swiftly put down by Confederate forces. The Confederacy engaged in economic warfare with the military of the Morian colony, the Kelmorian combine, continually stealing their mining claims. 10 years before the Great War, this eventually broke out into the Guild Wars in 2485. The 2 sides fought for almost 4 years before the Confederacy claimed victory. The Confederacy mistreated its colonies, and eventually its most prosperous one, Korhul IV, rebelled against it. The Confederacy killed the rebel leader, Angus Mengsk. However, this action was a mistake, since it put his genius son, Arcturus, in charge. The younger Mengsk immediately began a series of bombings and assassinations. When Mengsk was visiting the allied Umojan Protectorate, the Confederacy struck Korhul IV with a massive nuclear blast, destroying all life on its surface. Mengsk, now calling his rebel movement the Sons of Korhul, continued a guerrilla-style struggle with what few forces remained under his command. In his first mission against the Confederacy, he raided a secret installation, rescuing a ghost, Sarah Kerrigan, and becoming aware of secret experiments with newly discovered xenomorphs. Now this only gives a basic historical overview of the StarCraft storyline. There is honestly so much involving the storyline, characters, units from each major race, that I'm wondering if I have bitten off more than I can chew. But here is hoping that I can give you, dear listener, a satisfactory videographic breakdown that is the StarCraft franchise. In my next video, I will start off with the Xel'Naga, diving into their history, biology, culture, technology, etc. If you like what I'm doing, although I know many others have covered this topic before, possibly, I'm not 100% sure, shrug, could I request that you like the video and maybe share it as well? So until next time, Unusual Porra signing off.